Welcome back to Ronin's Den's follow-up episode to the Winry's whimsical one-shot of Fabula Ultima. I'm Eric. I'm here with Steve and with Dr. Squiggums or Farrow Blackwall from the game. And we're going to tell you what we liked and didn't like about Fabula Ultima as a system.
Yay.
We do have limited
All right,
time.
let's start with you.
Yeah,
let's start with you, Farrow, Doc Squiggums. Let's just hear your overall.
I was gonna say, don't call me Dr. Squiggums. That was my father's name. So you can call me Squigs.
All right, Squigs. So Squigs, how did you feel about Fabula Ultima as a system? How did you like it? Tell us. Just give it your unfiltered thoughts.
I was gonna say, Fabula Ultima has been a very fun system. It was probably unlike most of the other players that happened during that one shot. I knew a thing or two beforehand, so at least that helped because it was just more of an understanding of it. But it's been a fun system, especially as someone like me, because my entire life I've been a huge JRPG nerd. So making my own JRPG character has just been the most fun for me.
Okay.
But it's good as well as a TTRPG, considering is that I know everything's going on with D&D, and it's good to at least have another optional fantasy system to go there as well. That's easier to understand once you get the hang of it.
Yeah. I agree. So, how do you feel about the characters? How did you feel making a character was? Did you feel it was simple, intuitive, fun? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, character creation is simple. The hardest part is figuring out the concept.
Isn't that the truth?
It's like Steve's able to say as well, is that trying to make a character for the system, and not like the actual stat wise, because the stat wise they make it so easy to transition to like the different steps to make that character. It's more of like, what do I want to play? Do I want to play this or play this? I'm gonna go like this or go like this or this. I don't know. It's a JRPG. There's millions of combinations.
What is there? 15 classes all have like at least 8 different options to pick from for skills, and at level 1 you pick 5 levels between 2 to 3 classes.
Mm-hmm.
So like there is endless possibilities with your character.
It's not endless. It's not just 15. It's because we use the core rule book for this one shot. For the audience at home that's going to be listening to this, there are an official published official published DLC and 2 playtest materials going on right now as of this recording, which means there's a total of combination closer to about
20, 25?
I believe about 25 to 27.
Because there's
classes.
I want to say there's 4 or 5 of them in the High Fantasy Atlas.
4 in the High Fantasy.
Then there's the Necromancer and the Ace of Cards from like official downloads that they put out as standalone items.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're working on what? Was it the Nature Fantasy Atlas or the Tech Fantasy?
They're mainly focusing on the Nature Fantasy Atlas, considering that's the one that's getting the most work, because just a heads up for those that wish to run this game, you need to keep up with their Patreon because they do a lot of erratas. And the playtest material has the erratas. Like for instance, they made an errata to how the class Arcanist works. Because in the main core rulebook, the Arcanist summon basically only has 2 actions it does, which is merge and dismiss. In the playtest, it is merge, pulse, dismiss. Which means you can use that summon to attack.
More like a traditional summon from Final Fantasy.
I would actually say more of a summon, like a summon Esper from Final Fantasy 12 or
Okay.
an Aeon 10. It is, or it's not like the summoner job class per se. It's more of the way that they have it now works more like having like the summon really be a part of you during the combat.
Okay. What would you say the core mechanics that you find the most satisfying in play are?
Oh, you would definitely have to go with I'm gonna say you have to go with combat. Combat was very smooth, even though we kept missing everything. But
Hey now, Tiger didn't miss.
yeah, but the whole thing is that even though it was, in terms of that combat, was a slogfest comparatively, I would say Mr. GM, how fast was that combat?
Oh, if I want to compare that to, let's say, everybody's darling 5e, lightning fast.
Exactly. It's in 5e, one turn is going to take about an hour or so because everybody's planning everything. In this system, they have simplified it to which is that if you want to do something, you don't have to sit there for 10 minutes figuring out what step you're going to take. You are literally just going,
Yeah.
okay, I swing sword. Okay, I cast spell. Okay, I tell him your mom doesn't love you, and that'd be the end of your turn.
I would say I think the combat definitely feels like a JRPG where you would click attack and then you have a list of options, or you click spell and it gives you a list of options where you click, your round's done. They do an attack, you do an attack, then you select again. It definitely has that like Final Fantasy feeling to the
The
combat,
old
or at least that's how I felt. Yeah.
Well, you can always just do is have your mental thought process try to pick out different JRPGs to do the system for. Like for instance, if you want to be modern and stylized, you just try to figure out the list of Persona 5, and then you just try to do like cheat 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 while you're hearing you never see it coming. Do do you see? But it's yeah, that's the whole. I was gonna say that's the whole thing of. Ironically enough, it's just TTRPGs. It's like, oh yes, in the end, what is this? Spreadsheet simulator.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely thought combat was snappy and smooth. Like, contrast it to the last Ronin's Den one shot of the month, which was Savage Rifts.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god. Like, our whole session of that was a combat. One combat. There was the whole session, all 3 hours. This, we had, what was it? The combat was maybe 20 minutes. And that was prolonged. Yeah, just because, like, a Squiggy over here said was we kept missing, except for Tiger Fist. Tiger Fist didn't miss at all. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Tiger Fist was on fire.
No, Tiger Fist was on fire for that one combat scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I hit the pterodactyl. I just didn't do as much damage as old Lightning Blast over there, just like, yeah, unlimited power.
Right?
It's not my fault. It's not my fault you didn't try to properly use the press turn system.
Well, and that's something else. Okay, so getting back to the mechanics of the game, because that's what we're really like trying to hammer out here. That was something I found very interesting and also added a layer of, I want to say, complexity to the GM side of things, was accounting for the vulnerabilities of the enemies based on the character's abilities. That double damage for vulnerability, that's monstrous when it comes into play.
And the best thing is that it can happen to the players as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it could.
Oh, you know,
I
if
just
you're an absolute rat bastard of a GM, you can give them items that do increase stats, but do give them vulnerabilities.
Yep. Yeah, some of the rare items.
That is true. I was looking at some of those and they look awesome. Not gonna lie.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
But ultimately though, I didn't mind how easily we took down that final boss. The vulnerability can be debilitating, but at the same time, when you figure out something's weakness, it's pretty sweet. And Squeaky could have missed. Like, if he misses one of those, the combat is wildly different.
Yes.
So it wasn't this debilitating, like, horrible thing. It was just really lucky rolling. We figured out what the weakness was right out the gate. Only kind of critique, maybe don't tell us, but I mean, it was fun.
Well,
but yeah.
I mean, you're going to notice when I say, all right, you did 22 damage. Actually, that's 44.
Yeah, true.
I mean, unless I go into the realm of, all right, well, you tell me 22, and I just don't tell you that it did 44, and I just kind of keep that behind the scenes. But I don't feel like that's a cool way to go about things, because there are ways in that game to suss out things, vulnerabilities, like with this, the scan skill, where you spend a turn scanning the enemy and you can learn one thing about it, and you could determine what that one thing is.
That's one of the class's abilities, isn't it?
I think that's it. Go on.
I was gonna say it's actually an action that anybody can use. It's just more of better to use it with the Lore Master class because they get better bonuses with it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like me. I could have easily just started swinging. Started shooting my bow. It's completely fine. Do I have any sharpshooter skills? No, but I'm still gonna shoot the bow because I can.
Yeah. But yeah, all in all, I enjoyed the system a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have too many. Actually, I don't know if I have any complaints, really. No. Kind of wish there was a little bit more development in the social skills, but other than that, that's a lot of games neglect that and leave it just up to roleplay. So
yeah.
Well, and on the social side of things. On the social side of things, too, there's a couple classes that specialize in social skills. Like the Orator, a lot of their abilities are set around social. Now, some of those things do kind of enter the combat realm, but some of them don't. Then the Wayfarer has some social skills. And then I want to say the Chanter from the High Fantasy Atlas has some...
As well as the Merchant from the Nature playtest material.
Yeah, I haven't looked at any of the Nature playtest materials yet. Things I really liked about the system myself, like on a running it basis. Like I've only ran that game once previous, and it was a very similar one shot that I ran, but the open-endedness of the system, like, unless it's something very specific, like an accuracy check or a spell casting check, the ability to say, all right, let's look at climbing this wall, for instance, and we could pick one attribute each as a storyteller and a player to accomplish the goal. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. Let's go ahead and roll with that. So one player can tackle a climbing the wall task through sheer might. 2 might die are rolled, just physical strength, and somebody else could say, I'm going to tackle that, and I'm going to think about it at the same time and come up with a really good plan to go up first. So I, the game master, am going to say, I still want physical strength to be part of this, but I get where you're coming from. Let's go ahead and do physical power. We'll go with might and insight for this check. And then the next person could choose another dice to add to their might if it makes sense in their description, and roll with it. That was something I really liked.
Might.
Right?
Tiger Fist just.
The Fabula points are also something I enjoyed. Like that first encounter where Squigs used Fabula points to inject things into the story that I hadn't put in. So the ability for the system to give the players active world-shaping abilities as the game is going, I love. I think that's awesome.
That's where you arbitrarily created a rival gang to the Green Berets or whatever. What were they called? The Green
Sash. The Green Sash.
Scarfs?
Green Scarfs? Yeah. Something like that. I can't remember.
Maybe. Yeah. And then you created a faction that was opposed to them, the Red Turbans, off of Squigum's Fabula Point. So, yeah, the Fabula Points are pretty cool, too. You can also use them to, like, re-roll dice, and there's a lot of utility there.
As well as some classes actually have uses of Fabula Points. Like, the fun one for the Rogue is that if you spend a skill into it, you can spend Fabula Point, just disappear, and then reappear out of nowhere. Much like the grand trope you find in any anime or JRPG of that one rogue character that seems to disappear when nobody looks and then just reappears just to say, fuck you.
Right?
Yeah. Right now I'm going to interject Jesse's thoughts. His was like 2 sentences, so we're going to just read it and we can react to it. His thoughts are, Fabula Ultima is a system so easy to pick up, you can halfway ignore it. Great for teaching people new to tabletop games. Possibly the best. So, pretty short, sweet, and to the point.
I can get behind that statement. It's incredibly easy to pick up and run and learn on the fly. There's not a lot of moving parts to it. Like, a lot of people like to say D&D is the easiest game to learn, but it's not. There are so many moving parts to it. And other ones like Monster of the Week, Powered by the Apocalypse, Blades in the Dark, there's a lot of parts to them. This one is a very simple mechanic. Very simple.
I definitely... Go ahead.
I can say it definitely is. I will also say, too, as well, is that we weren't able to really see it, because much like the Fabula Points, the reason I like this system a little bit more is because it gives you villain resources of Ultima Points.
Yes. The villain equivalent of... yeah.
I don't really fault you, Duality, for not putting those in this one, because we weren't really fighting a villain. This was just a one-shot. This was kind of like that first little mission you play at the start of a JRPG, where you, like, do a quick little mission, you fight one big enemy, and then you go into the actual game. This was the tutorial.
Yeah.
So there was really no need for a villain with Ultima points, but it is good that you mention those because they are a unique way to make villains a little more awesome. And when I was talking with David about like that one little critique at the end of his, which was about like the enemies and whatnot, I kind of said the same thing, which we'll get to his stuff in a minute. But I kind of said the same thing. We're basically level 1 in a JRPG. We're not fighting Sephiroth or Talos or whatever the other villain he mentioned was. Lavos. We are literally in the tutorial of the video game with this session. Mm-hmm. If it was a campaign, the more levels you build, the more shit you get to do. Like I was a level 1, basically level 1. I know it's level 5. It's level 1. Tiger Fist could get 2 attacks on his own, and if you rolled an even number when attacking him, he got a 3rd attack. That was only going to get more as he built up to make it seem more like you're doing a lot more. So the limitedness made sense for a tutorial, but that was kind of, yeah.
Oh yeah. But I was gonna say that makes it the reason I like this is like the Ultima points a little bit more because it gives you as a dungeon master, a DM, it gives you something that allows you to reuse your villain NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all know is that if we ran D&D 5e, you had this one villain NPC you wanted to reuse, but the party says, nah, we're just gonna murder him. And you can't find a proper way to take him out of there. With the Ultima point, you could just spend one and be like, he gone.
Yep.
He flew on dragon. You don't see him. He shakes fist saying, I'll get you, He-Man!
Teleports away or escalates, even transforms into a bigger, badder
Until we
version of
meet
himself.
again.
Exactly.
Oh, but yeah, it's
I learned a bit about encounter design through that game. Part of the issue with that last encounter was I tried to get more clever for the system than I really should have. And instead of making a champion of the party's level, I decided to go ahead and try and throw two regular leveled base enemies at the party back to back as a transformation instead, and that made that encounter much easier than if I went with just a standard champion setup. But I learned. I mean, yes, technically what I did makes complete sense by the encounter balancing as it's written, but in application, it wasn't the right way to go with what I was looking to accomplish. But now I know, and I won't be doing that next time. Adjust.
Even then, I do know is that the core rulebook doesn't give you a lot of pre-mates, which is why I'm going to, in this video, fill out the official bestiary compendium, Fulminator.com, in which they have
how do you spell that?
FULTIMATOR.
.com.
Yep. It's
Okay.
it's a web app, but the whole thing is that it has a whole compendium of monsters to use for your campaigns, as well as having its own combat simulator, making sure with all of your saved monsters to see what works well. Of course, your dice roller, and even better is that for the GMs that like to be able to don't exactly have the massive creativity to make magical items on the fly, actually has a magical item generator, in which it gives you it's able to do is generate a quality for your magical item, and then you can just build it the way that you want it.
Neat.
Because this is a JRPG, it's every item is most likely going to be one type for each of the characters because it's the way that they are.
Man, that would have been very useful. I just looked it up.
Yep.
Dang. So I'm gonna start reading some of David's now, to get that done, and then I will go into mine and Eric's thoughts, all full stop. But David started with what I loved. Fabula Ultima is a game where every level comes with a choice that possesses mechanical consequences and opportunities for symmetry. The baked-in multi-classing turns 15 base classes into an endlessly mix and matchable array of interesting, modular mechanical character elements, and really hits the sweet spot on volume of options, which neither felt too limiting nor too vast. Yeah, I think we already touched on that.
Yep.
It was, I definitely agree. Rituals offer open-ended magical solutions with concrete skill-based checks. Squigums, why don't you talk about rituals since you're the one that actually used them in the game?
Yes. So, Fabula Ultima actually takes something from the dark ages of D&D known as 4E. With it is because anybody that's played 4E knows is that all like magic casters had their own abilities, which ability spells. Rituals were just the catch-all term for spells that you could just kind of make on the fly. For this system, it's the same thing. You're able to make spells on the fly that normally doesn't do any damage or anything like that. It's essentially making your own non-combat spells that you can do for the story. Like a common one is you help make a barrier around the town to stop a giant rock from falling onto it, or prestidigitation, or in my case, what I was trying to do on Goddamn Tiger, which was silence. You wouldn't stop
On the
singing.
road again.
Yeah.
On the road again.
I like how that mechanic has a very like a good framework for scope, like how big an area of effect you're looking to have, and then how powerful, so its magnitude. So you get there's no question on how much magic it's going to cost to cast the spell. There's just a really good, easy to understand chart while crafting this spell.
Agreed. So, all right, continuing on with David's thoughts. 4 base stats that combine on skill checks makes it easy to be good and hard to be great at lots of things.
Yeah. I agree and disagree on that one, because with the 3 different ability loadouts, you could go with the specialist loadout, for instance, and then only choose items and skills that benefit those. So you'll be great in that, but you'll be miserably bad in other things.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a way to word that, and you did it pretty well. Cause like you can get 2 D10s. Like if I had made Tiger with the specialized and got a D10 in might and a D10 in dex, which was basically all of my combat stuff, I would have been an even bigger monster than I was in combat. But I wanted him to be a little more well-rounded, so I went with the 10-8-8-6 method. Yeah. And I think the other option is 4d8s.
Yep.
Which is just you're good, you're okay at everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think there's a lot of variation. So where I agree that you can be good at a lot of things, I think you can be great too.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you could ever really make a character that's truly bad at anything.
No.
But you can suffer status effects to push you there.
Yeah, that's true.
What else has he got?
He edited this a little bit, but this is the last of his thoughts. It's a pretty big one. So, while I imagine that synergies ramp the power of spell casting at higher levels, similarly to D&D, martial classes seem to have higher average damage output, while spellcasters can dish some serious elemental damage or use status conditions, with the caveat that they are limited by MP. At early levels, buffs and debuffs seem to be hard to slot into the rotation of combat, but I imagine that other synergies emerge. They become not only useful, but necessary against tougher enemies. I don't... Yeah.
So, obviously, I haven't played the game at high levels yet, but from what I'm reading and what I'm seeing is while, say, like a mage character, like somebody who's casting a spell, they might hit that vulnerability, right? And get that double damage. The martial classes, they look like they get other things that even them out, like counterattacks and multi-attacks, depending on which classes and how you build your character class. So,
Yeah.
while I think they'll do consistent damage per hit, I think that'll be an accurate statement. But when you get things like multi-attack and provoke and counterattack, I think that the damage output could stay pretty consistent, but also think the multi-class thing where there's nothing stopping somebody from taking Weapon Master and then Elementalist and then the Spellblade ability to cast spells using your physical, like your sword on a sword strike to get that vulnerability damage. Like, I think as the game goes on, all the classes will kind of like, depending on how you build, get into a pretty even configuration for damage output.
I can see that.
I haven't played it to that level yet, so I don't know, but it looks like it'd be completely within the realm of believability that would be the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's even funnier, too, because the way that you actually said in terms of that, there's actually a Final Fantasy character that can do that by the name of Albert Steiner from Final Fantasy IX.
Yep. And you can make him in
goofball
Fabula
of a
Ultima. You can create him in Fabula
Oh.
Ultima easily.
I also want to add that there was a lot of missing between David, Jesse, and Squigums. So that comment there, the perception might be skewed, because if I had missed a little more, I might not have had the consistent damage output. Where, like, I think I was doing roughly 15 to 16 on my primary attack. My secondary attack had a max damage of 11. So I could do about 25 damage a round if I did really good on my rolls. But Squigums, with his one magic spell, did 22. That was doubled to 44. If he had hit with all of those and not missed most of the combat, I feel like that discrepancy wouldn't have felt as extreme. I just think the dice weren't on the side of the people that were missing. And I don't know if that skews the perception. And like I said, I don't want to invalidate someone's thought. It's just, that's kind of something from my looking back that might have attributed to that thought.
And like I said, I don't know, but from looking at these classes, I mean, there's nothing that stops you from building a melee character that has some spells in it with them and using your weapons to achieve it. But even then, there are martial abilities. While, you know, that high roll +6 will be the consistent damage, yes. And it's not going to hit those vulnerabilities, but some enemies have vulnerabilities to different types of physical damage as well. Some are vulnerable to piercing, some slashing, some bludgeoning. I think that the game is set up to be very kind to all players that pick up the game, regardless of which build they go with. But definitely, if the dice aren't on your side, I can definitely see that thought process forming. Absolutely.
So, one final thing, like I said, he edited his message, but I do want to talk about the thing he did bring up in the chat that I commented on. He said that the action economy, where you get one action and then the enemies get an action, he said it felt like there was a lack of things to do, or that you had to seriously decide what action you were going to pick, because I forget how he worded it without looking at it, but I'm trying to explain it to the best I can. Maybe one of you two read it and can explain it better. But essentially, he was saying that it felt like you were limited in the actions you could take, and that it felt like there were certain actions that were just better than others. And like I said before, the way I viewed this one shot was it was the tutorial. Like, if we were starting up Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy 22, whatever, you have that tutorial where you're learning the buttons, you're learning how the system works, and you have very limited options. Our final boss was just a robot pterodactyl. It wasn't Sephiroth. It wasn't Lavos. It was... We were in the bare minimum beginning of the game, and I feel like when we get later in the game, you'll feel like there's a lot more options. You'll feel like there's a lot more things you can do because of the way things synergize and the way your character is built. So, and like I said, I didn't want to invalidate his feelings or his thoughts on that. It's just, for me, I think the perception might have been a little different.
And I want to take some responsibility on that too, because I tried to get clever in that final encounter. I should have gone with making a champion to have the party fight as the boss. Because what that would have done was multiply the hit points and the number of attacks that that critter had that the party was fighting. But because I decided to go just based on party level and grab a monster, in this case 2, that exceeded the party level, but was still within like hard but not deadly combat, its action economy was much less. So instead of getting multiple attacks per round to match however I multiplied that creature up, so like say there are 5 of you, I multiplied that level 5 creature by 5. So it would have had an equal number of attacks that the party did, and its hit points would have been multiplied by 5. I instead said, nah, I'm going to be clever. I'm going to grab these 2 big monsters that are level 15 and level 15, which is a level 30, total of 30 levels worth of creature, and I'm going to throw that at the party instead. But since it didn't have those attacks, like an increased number of attacks, it just had increased hit points. That vulnerability really sunk the creature quickly. So that's something I learned while playing this game and doing that encounter. Next time, I can do the same type of creature, but I'll go with a champion instead of just an inflated level.
Yeah.
So that was my encounter design that caused that issue.
So, yeah.
I tried to be too smart.
I guess I'm gonna go to both of you here. Squiggy, what if was there anything about the Fabula or anything about the Fabula Ultima system that you don't like, that you wish was different?
Well, I was gonna say is when I first got the core rule book, it was like, oh yeah, it's a little. I was gonna say it's a little upsetting because I do know they give you a lot of good options. They tell you to reflavor, but it's that because this is a JRPG, you need JRPG weapons, which means that you need the one character, of course, swings the sword, the other one that has the bow, and then the one weird motherfucker that's hitting somebody with yellowfin tuna. You can left, but it's true. There's literally one of there is an entire character.
I know.
But the whole thing is that most of the time it's like no. Luckily, they actually started implementing because they actually made it a very simple system to make custom weapons.
Yeah.
So it's that if you want to be able to be like, all right, Mike, because right now is I'm trying to work a little bit of my Fabula Ultima campaign, and one of my players' entire weapons that he wants to use is just a bag full of cooking equipment.
Okay.
So it's not just him like using a knife to fight. No. He's using an entire bag full of cooking equipment that includes things like rolling pins, knives, tongs, spatulas.
So you're saying like just more definitive, like fleshed out examples of gear.
Yes.
Okay.
But like I said,
Okay.
luckily they changed it when it came with the custom weapons, which makes it easier to be like, hey, I'm going to make something stupid for my weapon that feels JRPG.
Okay.
Bluefin tuna. All right, duality. Anything about the system that you wish was different that you didn't like?
So, one minor thing that's very similar to what Squigs just said, I would like more of a definitive list of skill check examples. They give a pretty small list of sample rolls that you could go off of, but sometimes it could be, I could see it might become a little difficult to come up with which 2 dice to roll in any given situation. So the game does give you some guidance, which is just, come up with one as the game master, come up with one as the player, and if it makes sense, go with it. But I think more examples of common things that you might run into for those 2 dice to be rolled would be handy. And then one that didn't come up in combat, or I should say I didn't allow to come up into combat because it just would not have worked well with the party build, was the fact that flying enemies can only be hit by spells and ranged weapons.
Oh.
So because
that would have changed a lot.
Okay.
I mean, weren't the lanterns flying?
Yes.
Oh, we would have got wrecked.
Exactly.
We would have got wrecked. Tiger did the most damage.
Yeah, and because the party composition, I decided early on I was not going to have that in effect, because that would have effectively sidelined. I would have changed all the encounters, and if I didn't, it would have sidelined 3 of the players. And I didn't know this, like the party, like I didn't know what everybody was playing definitively until pretty much day of. So yeah. It's like I didn't have the time to go back and rework those encounters. So more ways for ground-based enemies to interact with flying enemies would be something I'd look for. But yeah, those are the 2 things I would say.
Okay. I don't really have a huge critique. So one of the things in the game that I wanted to do, I originally wanted to do 2 weapons and like swing with both hands. But my weapons had a 6 damage, meaning that a normal hit with one of them was probably going to do more damage than the 2 weapons, because the 2 weapons, you don't use your high roll. It's just the weapon damage. Mm-hmm. So my attacks were doing 12 to 13 roughly per hit, which was more than my 2 weapons would have done 6 and 6. But if you miss one, you've lost everything. So there was no real benefit to doing 2 weapons, unless I got a weapon that was doing like 15 damage, which would be like a magic item in the future. But base level 2 weapons just isn't as viable as, say, just swinging. And then this one isn't really a complaint about the system, but there's a lot of choice paralysis, man. Trying to make a character, I sat there and I looked at him and I had 100 ideas. Yeah. Like, originally I wanted to do Tiger Thunder Fist, where he literally punched with thunder fists. And then I'm like, I'm trying to build that. Then I'm like, I'm going to do this Necromancer build. Nah, I'm going to do a Summoner build. Nah, I'm going to do just a Brawler. Like, I didn't know what I was playing till like 2 days before, when I finally was like, fucking sit down, Steve, and pick a class. pick a character, damn it.
No more ADHD. I gotta focus.
Like, it was bad. I did not know what I wanted to play. And even after picking, I was like, man, maybe I should have played something else. Then we played and I had fun. So it was nullified. But there is choice paralysis out the wazoo.
Yeah. And that's part of that design with you're forced to multi-class. I get why you're forced to multi-class, how the progression for the characters goes, only 10 character levels per class, then you take your capstone ability, and then you pick another class to level up. So I see why you have to multi-class to begin. But yeah, creating your character with that many classes, that many options, and the fact that you can make practically any character from media. Oof.
Yeah.
It's real. But that's all I have on Fabula Ultima. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to add before we close it up?
Nope.
No.
Awesome.
I'm good. All in all, I recommend it. Anybody who hasn't played it definitely should. It's fun. It's easy. And I think a campaign in Fabula Ultima would be fantastic.
Yep. I totally agree. I give it a good 9 out of 10. Right there. If you are looking to get into Fabula Ultima and try it out, I will say it's a very inexpensive system to try. You do not need to buy the core rulebook. They have something called the Press Start Guide, which is like $5. And inside of it, it has pre-made characters, a pre-done scenario. It walks you through step by step on when to use certain abilities and when they unlock. It's a very handy piece of player introduction. I have it on my shelf. It was one of the reasons I decided to pick up the main core book. It was after I looked through it and I was like, this looks really super handy. So low barrier to entry on cost, low barrier to entry on learning the system. Highly recommended. Anybody who's a fan of JRPGs to check it out, or somebody's just looking for a rules light fantasy RPG.
I'm going to correct duality. If you go to DriveThruRPG, the press start is free.
Okay. I paid $5
No
on
money to
Amazon.
start.
Yeah, I paid $5 on Amazon back last Christmas.
That's great. That's the PDF, not the physical copy. But the PDF is free. And all you need are just your dice.
Yep.
That's it. And you can get free dice rollers online. You could play this game for free.
Yep.
Easily.
So.
What were you about to say, Squiggy?
Yeah, I'll give the
No, I
final
was
word to
gonna say
Squiggy.
the same thing. I was gonna say you fucked up. No, but this is a great system. Great system. I'm gonna be honest, is that while looking into their official Discord, it is a very active community. There's a guy on their website that basically is, as long as you give him the go ahead, if you want to stream Fabula Ultima, there's already a pre-made soundtrack that he gives the rights to be able to use on stream. Not only
Really?
that, oh yeah, no, it's on the website. It's you're actually able to see here's the Fabula Ultima soundtrack. As long as you pay for it and give heads up and things like that, you're able to use it. So you don't have to worry about buying music or having those really bad public domain songs that you just look at there and you're like, why the fuck are we using this for our campaign? So it's great to use there. Not only that, is they do a lot of updates onto things, so there's always trying to make sure hey, this is what's happening within the system, all the erratas, things along there. Here's the updates on everything. And what I was gonna say too is, like I said earlier, was not just the weapon generator or the arcana generator that's able to save them, but it's all the compendium, so you're all set.
Cool.
Okay. Well, that's all good knowledge to know. But yeah, so if anybody is still watching, thank you for watching. I'm Steve. This is Eric. Thank you to Squiggy for joining us for this breakdown of Fabula Ultima. Our next one-shot is not actually going to be in May. It's going to be June 1st, due to the end-of-the-month holidays of May being Memorial Day. But we are playing Cyborg. It is the sister cyberpunk game of Morkborg. Prepare for a lot of death. Characters die. It's what happens in the board games. We're looking forward to that. Also, next week we have... I'm blanking on his name. Holy crap. The creator of Grimwood Games is going to be joining us, and we're going to be going over his TTRPG, which is Grimwood something. Grimwood City. God, I'm horrible at this. Grimwood City, we're going to be interviewing him about that game, about the system. It is going to Kickstarter in July, so we are getting an early sneak peek at it, and we're looking forward to that. But anyway, thank you for watching, and everyone have a great night. Thank you again, Squiggy. Get us out of here, Duality.
All right. See everybody next week.